Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. I'm Scott Schneider. Well, this week is a follow-up to the series of vintage audio in the movies and on television. So this is the fourth episode of this series, and based on the number of movies and television series that have audio gear in them that I've documented and people have submitted, I have a long way to go to sort of get through everything. But if you've seen a movie or have one in mind, please put it in the comments. You might want to check out the prior videos because I've covered quite a few so far. But this week I'm going to cover a few more. One of the movies that I'm going to start off with is As Good as It Gets with Jack Nicholson. And what a great movie. I remember this movie when it came out in '97. And just a great, Helen Hunt is in this. Just a fantastic cast and a good storyline. But the character played by Jack Nicholson is a bit OCD and set in his ways a bit and has some, peculiar quirks to him. But he's a writer, and as a writer, he likes to listen to his music. And he's got a phenomenal system. And it's one that's hard to figure out, though. And so I've taken some pictures of it and a little bit of video here so you can see what it looks like. But as you can tell, it's a bit dim lit room, and it's kind of hard to make out some of these pieces. But I've done the best I could, so I took the pictures aside and tried to research them as best I could. Now we'll start with the speakers, and as you can tell, they're towers, and they have a unique shape to them. In some of the comments I've seen in different places, some folks thought they were an Avalon speaker, but they don't look like an Avalon model that I can find. Some others thought they were a teal speaker, but they don't have the teal shape that I'm familiar with. I have some teal CS7s, and they're not that shape. They have a bit of an angle, on the bottom, and you can see in the right side speaker, you can see that the bottom of the grill cover is a bit angled. And so it looks like it has that shape that sort of angles in at the bottom, a bit of a triangular shape. So based on what I can tell from the shadows, I think it's a Sony model. Now the Sony SS-M9 is what it looks to me as being the most similar to. However, the one thing that's odd about those speakers in the movie is that it has what looks to be some sort of a tweeter on top. And I'm not sure if that's actually part of the speaker or if it's just something that he's sitting up there. He is OCD, so he would probably have something on each one of them to match if that was the case. But I couldn't find a speaker that had all of these characteristics. Now, there is a Sony SS-M9 ED model that does have a somewhat top-mounted tweeter on it. However, I couldn't find one in this wood veneer to match this one. So the jury's out for me. I can't say conclusively what speakers these are, but this is as close as I could get to what I think they might be. So you guys are super sleuths, so let's see if anyone has some ideas on what it could be and lock this down. Now next to it is the stereo system itself. So what you can clearly tell is a McIntosh amp and preamp there. So what we can see to the right is a McIntosh system. And what I can tell, it looks like the amp is an MC352, I believe, and with a preamp on top, which is a C712 from what I can tell. Again, it's a little fuzzy, so it's hard to be very clear, or very sure, but to me that's what it looks like. Now going further to the right, I honestly couldn't really tell what the rest of the components were. There's a turntable there and some other pieces, so you guys can tell me what they are because I honestly couldn't figure them out. If anybody has any guesses, please submit those and we'll put them in our little current database, which is just a list I have at the moment, and we'll see if we can figure out what these are, and I'll talk about it on a future episode. All right, well next up is another movie from 1978. And it's the movie FM. And this was kind of a cool movie. I had not seen this movie, and I haven't seen it yet. I've only seen the clips that I've reviewed, but it did look like a very fun movie. It would give you the impression that this movie inspired the television show WKRP in Cincinnati, but from what I read, the pilot for that show, for WKRP, had already been shot, so it actually had nothing to do with it, but boy, was it very similar in nature. It's about an FM station that was hitting success and very much hitting the market. I think this is in LA, and they were #1 in their market, and you know, some bad ownership comes into play, and they want to do some things, and they drive off the station manager essentially. But it's a fun story, lots of great characters in it as far as the broadcasters. You know, it's similar in nature to WKRP in that regard. But throughout the movie, being a station and being this is 1978, there are lots of scenes of various gear. Now, a lot of the gear that's shown is sort of professional reel-to-reel recording type gear, but there were some scenes where there were some home audio type gear. So in the opening scene, you see it right out of the gate, and it's a scene where a fellow's waking up, the station manager actually, and he's going to be late for work. But in this scene, you see a very large receiver right there on his nightstand. I'm not sure how he was able to get it up there, but you know, it's certainly taken up the whole nightstand. But anyway, in this shadows, you can sort of depict the number of knobs on it, and the fact that there's the radial dial, which shows it to be and identifies it as a Marantz. Now, it took me a little while to figure this out because it's not a very common Marantz that I can tell. And I first started with that picture and then compared it to a scene later in the movie in a different location, and it's a much clearer picture. And I could find that it is actually a 4415, which is a quad receiver and not a very common one. I've not ever seen one, and I actually can't recall actually seeing that one before I tracked it down, essentially. It seems to be not one that did not get a lot of production and doesn't seem to have many numbers out there for it. What little bit I did read about it very quickly was that it is only a quad unit. It can't switch from 2 to 4. So maybe for that reason, it probably didn't sell in very large numbers when it was out. So that's kind of interesting that they chose that one for the movie. You'll see that same one later in the scenes where they're in the office and the station manager is sitting at the desk and it's behind him. That same desk seems to be used by everybody throughout the movie, so you sort of see it multiple times. Now, next up, in the very next sequence of scenes, you see the radio station itself, and there's a great scene where they're actually in the booth, and you see the camera sort of coming back and giving you a broader picture of the room. And the very first thing you see is a reel-to-reel that's sitting there, and you can see it coming back, and then you see the control panel. Well, that reel-to-reel, it's a professional recording studio type reel-to-reel, and as I understand after doing some research, it's called a Scully 280, and I'm assuming it was fairly popular. I know nothing about it other than I was able to identify what model it was, but what you would typically see, and I think in a recording or FM broadcast station of the day. So that's one thing there. In the background, you see the control panel there, which I think I saw somewhere that it's an RCA, if I recall. Now the turntables that they're using, the only one I could identify, it looks to be a Technics SP10 Mark II, I believe. And those are pretty rare. They're very, very nice tables, but I believe they were intended to be for professional use. So you don't see them in homes that often. Of course, these days it's about the only place you'll see them. But back then, I think they were specifically made for broadcast studios. And that's very cool. There's a couple of up close shots of the turntable in play, and you get to see the tone arm there. Not sure what that was. I think one of the turntables I saw, the tone arms, I think it had a Stanton cartridge on it maybe. It's about as close as I could get to identifying that level of detail. But you didn't get to see the turntables up close too often. even though they were always from a distance in the clips that you got to see. Now it's the office scene where you get to see most of the actual home audio gear. And there's several scenes, they spend a lot of time in there. And on the back side, behind the desk, where the people are sitting in the main sort of boss's chair, you can always see the Marantz receiver back there. But as they're walking around, there's a wall unit there, or a wall with several pieces mounted into the wall. And it's hard to see because, you know, it's not very clear video. But from what I can tell, it looks like there are three units in the wall. The top two, kind of distinctive looking SAE units from what I can tell. And the top one looks like it's a 2200 amp. And then the middle one looks to be an 1800 EQ. And then on the bottom, we have a tuner. From what I can tell, it looks like a Kenwood KT5300, I believe. So based on what I could tell from the blurry pictures, I'm kind of confident that's what those are. I didn't see any speakers that I could make out. And there was a reel-to-reel in some of the scenes as well. Wasn't quite sure what that was, but I'll show you a picture of it here. But those are all of the home audio pieces I could see in the movie itself. Couldn't make out any speakers anywhere. I'm sure they were in the room, but they just didn't give them good visibility, so I really couldn't make them out. But it appears to be a very fun movie. A lot of interesting characters. The DJs are quite interesting. So if you're looking for a bit of a nostalgic movie around radio, you know, that'd be a good one to watch. If it's playing, you know, you might want to catch it on Netflix or something. Well, next up is a movie called Everybody Wants Some. Well, apparently not many people wanted much of this movie. It came out in 2016. It had a budget of $10 million, I believe is what I read, and box office receipts were only $5 million. So didn't exactly, you know, bring everyone in, but it looks like a very fun movie from what I could tell. The storyline is it's about a college baseball team set in the 1980s. And reminded me a lot of a John Hughes movie. I think this movie probably needed to come out in the 1980s. But it looks very fun. It looks very much Animal House, a lot of antics, of course, you know, and things like that. And they're dressed up, you know, like we were in the 1980s. And it looks very fun. But it was being college kids. There is a great setup and a great stereo scene. And for a while, I actually couldn't figure out some of the pieces because one of the characters was sitting in front of some of the pieces. But I did find a behind the scenes clip, and one of the actors takes you through the setup in that room and then walks through there a bit, and you get a much better view of all the pieces in there. So with that, I was able to sort of figure out what most of the pieces are. Well, it shows very clearly, and he actually points to it, there's a Pioneer RT701 that's sitting on a shelf up top. And then the speakers are actually mounted on the wall too, and they're clearly JBL. I think they're L82s maybe. I don't think they're L100s, but you know, I could be wrong. Now there's a very cool cassette deck that's in there, and this is what took me a little while to figure out because in the beginning the main character was sitting in front of most of it. And it appears to be a Marantz SG8000 cassette deck. And one I've never seen in person myself, and it looks quite interesting. Next to that, he has a Marantz, which Marantz is, you know, we seem to see Marantz quite a bit, but it's another quad unit, and I think that's a 4270 quad receiver. And on top of that is a turntable, which that's that Pioneer series, and I've always, they're very distinguished looking with their plinth. And it looks like a PL41, but there's several models that look very similar. So it might be another model, but it's of that series anyway. And, you know, quite cool. They're not as sophisticated as others from Pioneer, but they just look cool. I just love, you know, that style and very distinctive. I've never had one in my possession, but, you know, I've always admired them from afar, if you will. So that's kind of it for this week. Some interesting pieces for some of the movies that we've seen. Marantz seems to get a lot of attention. I think there seems to be a lot of them out there, especially the quads. I don't know, it's just luck that we have a couple of Marantz quads in the videos that we've seen today. But if anybody can point out what speakers those are from Jack Nicholson's character has, really be quite interested to figure that one out. That's a bit of a mystery. Some other units that we've seen throughout are kind of interesting. Check out the movie FM. Looks like a lot of fun. I thought it was something I need to go back and check out, as well as Everybody Wants Some that does look like a fun movie. I'm a little befuddled why it sort of bombed so much at the box office, but it does look like it's a kind of a fun movie. I guess you need to have an hour and a half to literally waste, because it's, not a lot of storyline there, but it does look like a lot of fun. If you're in the mood to waste some time, it looks like a good one to have fun with. But anyway, that's it for this week. You guys got any more movies and shows to point out, put them in the comments. If you don't want to miss the next one, hit subscribe. Want to get notified, hit that bell. As always, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you soon.